Fort Haven, the largest military base buried deep in the desert, was alive that morning with the roar of fighter jets, the pounding of marching boots, and the harsh shouts of drill sergeants, every soldier caught in the rhythm of discipline and fear. Yet somewhere far from the parade grounds, behind a desk stacked high with dusty folders and endless files, sat Daniel Cole, the man nobody noticed. The man whose life was defined not by rifles or medals, but by ink-stained fingers and paper cuts. A thin and unremarkable clerk who seemed to blend into the walls like a shadow, invisible to the men who swaggered past his office with rifles slung across their shoulders, for to them Daniel was nothing more than a forgettable piece of furniture, a body without purpose, a background detail in the great theater of war. But what they did not know, what no one dared even imagine, was that Daniel carried inside him a past buried under layers of secrecy and betrayal, a past forged in fire and blood, a past that was about to collide violently with their present. And it began that morning when General Marcus Steele, the iron-fisted commander of the base, a man who wore arrogance like armor and believed more in fear than loyalty, summoned the entire base to the Central Assembly Hall, his boots striking like thunder as he stepped onto the stage, his booming voice demanding silence. And then, with a sneer cutting across his face, he barked that he needed a volunteer for a mission too dangerous for the weak, a mission that would test the very marrow of courage. And the hall went still. Hundreds of soldiers frozen in place, each man knowing that volunteering meant near certain death, yet none daring to move, none daring to raise a hand. Until Steele's fury erupted, his insults raining down like fire, calling his men cowards, mocking their silence, stepping off the stage to shove his face into theirs, daring them to prove their worth. But even then no one stepped forward, until suddenly, from the very back of the hall, a voice calm and steady cut through the tension with three words that silenced the laughter and froze the air. "I'll volunteer." And when the soldiers turned to see who had spoken, when the whispers spread like wildfire through the hall, all eyes landed not on a muscular warrior, not on a battle-hardened veteran, but on Daniel Cole, the paperwork clerk, the man no one remembered until now. And the hall erupted in disbelief and laughter, some mocking, some shocked, until Steele himself stomped down the aisle, towering over Daniel like a predator over prey, his lips curling into a cruel smile as he barked, "You? A man who hides behind desks and stamps? You think you can carry steel?" And though the laughter of the soldiers rippled around them like waves, Daniel did not flinch, did not blink. His gaze locked unshakably on the general's eyes, and in that unspoken stare there was something so unsettling, so quietly defiant, that for the briefest of moments even Marcus Steele, the feared commander, felt the tremor of unease deep in his gut, a tremor he quickly buried beneath a smirk as he spat. "Fine then, clerk, you've chosen your grave. Let's see how long you last," dismissing the crowd with a wave. But as the soldiers filed out, whispering, laughing, wondering if the paper man had lost his mind, none of them realized that the invisible ghost who had lived among them for years had just stepped into the light, and that the mission Steele had called for would not test Daniel Cole's courage. It would unleash the truth of who he really was. The soldiers prepared for the mission with restless energy, yet all eyes kept drifting toward Daniel Cole, the clerk who had shocked them all by volunteering. Some whispering that he was insane, others uneasy at the calm way he carried himself, and none more suspicious than Sergeant Miller, a battle-hardened veteran who pulled Daniel aside and growled, "You'll get us all killed. Clerk, why are you really here?" To which Daniel only replied with chilling calm, "Sometimes the quietest man in the room is the one you should fear most," leaving Miller unsettled enough to dig through classified files late that night, where he uncovered the truth. Daniel was no ordinary clerk, but a ghost soldier from a Black Ops program long erased from records. A man trained to infiltrate, to fight, to kill without leaving a trace. The sole survivor of a betrayed mission years ago, after which he disappeared into the shadows of paperwork and silence. Shaken by the revelation, Miller watched the next day as Daniel moved through the field with uncanny precision, spotting traps, disarming enemies, and guiding the squad with instincts no ordinary man could possess, his quiet competence leaving even the most seasoned fighters whispering in awe. But far away, General Marcus Steele watched the reports with narrowing eyes, for he recognized the ghost now walking among his men, and in that recognition lurked the shadow of a betrayal long buried but never forgotten. When the squad returned to Fort Haven, their uniforms torn and dusty from the mission, the whispers that once mocked Daniel Cole had turned into murmurs of awe and disbelief, for it was no longer possible to deny what they had seen with their own eyes. The so-called clerk had outpaced them all, guiding them through ambushes, dismantling enemies with swift precision, and reading the battlefield as if the map were written in his mind. And though no official report credited him, every soldier knew that without Daniel, none of them would have made it back alive. Yet while respect began to grow among the ranks, in the shadows of power, a dangerous flame of resentment ignited in General Marcus Steele, for Steele had built his rule on fear and humiliation, on being the unchallenged symbol of strength. But now a man he had once mocked as worthless had stolen the loyalty of the men with nothing but calm resolve and frightening skill, and that was a humiliation Steele could not endure. In the mess hall, the soldiers' voices rose in quiet admiration of Daniel, some daring to call him a leader, others whispering that the general himself looked shaken, and every word of it reached Steele like daggers in his pride, until at last, unable to contain the storm inside him, he summoned Daniel to his private office late at night, the air inside thick with cigar smoke and the heavy weight of metals that gleamed from the walls, like silent witnesses of arrogance. And there Steele stood behind his desk, eyes burning with contempt as he growled, "You've embarrassed me, clerk. You've made me look weak in front of my men. And I won't have it. This army needs obedience, not ghosts from the past." But Daniel, as always, stood silent, his calm gaze steady, and that silence enraged Steele more than words ever could. His fist slamming the desk as he leaned forward and spat, "I could end you with a single order. Crush you under the weight of this system, erase you from existence." Yet before the last word could even settle in the air, Daniel moved not with the hesitation of a subordinate, but with the precision of a predator, and in an instant the mighty general found himself twisted to the ground, his arm locked painfully behind his back, his breath stolen by the sheer speed of the maneuver. And the guards who rushed to intervene froze in disbelief, their rifles trembling as they realized the clerk had dismantled their commander faster than their eyes could follow. And as Steele struggled on the floor, gasping with rage and humiliation, Daniel leaned close, his voice a cold whisper that pierced deeper than any weapon. "I didn't volunteer for your mission to prove myself. I volunteered for justice." And at those words Steele's eyes widened, not in pain but in recognition, for he knew exactly who Daniel Cole really was. He knew the face of the ghost soldier who had survived when an entire Black Ops unit had been betrayed a decade earlier. And worse, Steele knew the truth that no one else did, that he himself had been the one who sold out Daniel's team, trading their lives for his own rise in power. And now, as he lay crushed beneath the weight of the man he thought invisible, Steele realized the past had come back for him, and this time, there would be no hiding from the reckoning. The truth could know longer stay buried. Daniel revealed Steele's betrayal with hard evidence he had carried in silence for years, proof that the general had sold out his own men for power. And once the whispers spread across the base, Steele's grip of fear shattered, the soldiers who once obeyed him lowering their weapons when he barked orders, their loyalty shifting quietly toward the man they had mocked as a clerk. In a tense courtyard standoff, Steele, desperate and cornered, drew his pistol at Daniel. But before the trigger could be pulled, Daniel disarmed him with swift precision, dropping the once feared general into the dirt before the eyes of his men, his downfall sealed not by bullets, but by the weight of truth. Dragged away in disgrace, Steele vanished into chains, while Daniel, the forgotten clerk, stood tall at last, not seeking power or glory, but proving that sometimes the quietest man can bring down the loudest tyrant, and in that silence, an army found its courage again.